Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. We're back with another edition of the Wrestling Underground podcast. I am again your host, Chad. Joining me is the glorious one himself, Marcus. Marcus, how the hell are you?
Good man, we post a TNA pay per view.
Right, coming off of it. I watched it at work. It was, I would say, I don't think it was better than last year's Bound for Glory, but I do think it's one of the best three since 2024, if not going back even further than that. I thought it was good. I thought it could have been great, and it wasn't, and I think that's okay, considering one of the things that came out of this event was that we now have three new signees on the roster, and that was imperative for this company. So I think for everything that we have going on with it, with the fact that I think there's some ups and downs and some real conversations we need to have about the women, I do think they're doing what needs to be done finally. Let's get started with the opening pre-shows. The Righteous took on Swan and BDE. I think this is a nothing burger of a match. It's inoffensive. They're getting BDE reps because they do have faith in him as a performer. But I feel like they need to find a way to get Swan more over because with their current main event situation, even though I thought as a champion he was a little bit of a soft champ, I didn't really think he was a guy who should be heading a company. I do think with the way the roster is, Swan needs to have a bigger role in the company, but that also might be dependent on his contract. I think they end up having guys who don't have regular contracts not be in such high profile positions. So I think that's something that could be holding him back because I know he's on an open per date deal. The Righteous get the win. BDE and Swan, though, I think should continue as a regular tag team. Marcus, any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I'm glad you said that because I was just going to ask you that question exactly. You think they should continue to not only to kind of supplement BD's inexperience, but also give some ability to give Swan something to do and keep him on consistency as well. I mean, that's one thing that haven't always liked everything that's come from the Righteous. Thought they still with the hardest. Went about the way that they should have. They always needed to get to a certain tipping point that you led to that. But with this, like you said, it's a nut burger for you. Um, I did BD's progression, obviously. I think, like you said, they let him get his reps in, seeing improvements as the matches go along. Um, coming off you saying they should stay as a tag team, do you continue this feud and eventually let them get the win over the Righteous to elevate these two, or do you kind of just move them on to something else?
I think it depends long term what the goal is for BDE and Swan. If the goal is for them to eventually become tag champs, I think you keep them with the Righteous. The Righteous are not going to be tag team champions, at least shouldn't be anytime soon, or if not ever. I don't think they're that kind of a tag team. So I think doing a short program with them, maybe through the rest of the summer up into the start of the fall, wouldn't be the worst idea. And then seeing what you can do with them come Bound for Glory time, maybe in a bigger tag team profile. But if the goal is just to get them on TV so BDE gets reps, no, have the Righteous find a tag team that can help or be helped by being put with them. So it really all depends on what the end game here is for the rest of the year for Swan and BDE. Speaking of Endgame, we have Candice Michelle showed up. She's still looking pretty dang fit, man. She's pushing 50. So, like, God bless her. Trey Miguel took on Special Agent Zero next. I think Trey Miguel got the win, giving Special Agent Zero
Yeah.
his first loss in TNA. I think it's time to drop the special agent and come up with a genuine gimmick for Zero because a lot of fans really enjoy his work. He is older, he's in his 40s now. But I think he's proven that he's a unique enough talent on this roster that you can give him some, airtime, some screen time that's entirely up to him. and can become more than just a heavy for Mustafa. But I would still keep
Yeah,
him with Order 4, but move him away from the silent
yeah,
bodyguard and start letting him embrace his inner Diesel, if you will.
yeah. I like this. I dug this match. Always been a big fan of Trey. Glad to see him back coming off of that splitting his knee. Um, Vastly the way that he did that match with Ali. I think to me, you put him back against Ali, particularly with how things kind of shaked out. We'll get into later. But you take him, uh, let him get his paces through special agency. You kind of run the speed a little bit till he can maybe get past him and then get to Ali and leave. Um, I mean, that's kind of how it should be. I mean, that's the reason why he's in the group in the first place. But I do like the concept and the way they booked the match that he won, he didn't beat him. So um, I think you can keep this up, not stretch it out too much, but just enough to where he can get a definitive win to make a case to go back up against the man that he was trying to go after when he initially got injured. So
I think so. I think they might be building up to Trey and Ali at Bound for Glory, and I don't think that'd be the
mhm.
worst idea, honestly. All right, let's move on down to the last pre-show match. This is the pre-show. Oh, nope. The pre-show match that we skipped is actually a dark match. It's not a pre-show match. It was Joe Alonzo defeating the hometown man. If Alonzo won, and it was for the AAW Heavyweight Championship, if Alonzo won, he would be signed by TNA. And he did win. So he becomes the first new member of the roster that night, and Alonso's been around the TNA sphere for a little bit. So this isn't like a shocking signing. I think he was trained by Ali, so like this is not again an unsurprised signing. He has ties to the TNA roster. Guys know him. I like Alonzo. I think he's a good enough hand that you can get something out of him. And depending on what they do with him character wise, he might be something worth watching. But at the very least, he's a new name and a new body on the roster, which is something that they desperately need. So like not the worst thing, even if he just becomes, a hanger on. We then start the show. It's Elijah versus AJ Francis. This was better than I thought it would be. I wouldn't say it was anything too impressive. We went from the very first ever lockdown had Abyss versus AJ Styles, which is I still think a top five, maybe top 10 match in TNA history. It had Jeff Hardy versus Raven in a tables match. It had was Sabu in the first one? I know Sabu was in the second one because he faced Samoa Joe at the event, and they had all these big moments and spots, and I was hoping that each kind of match would have that. This one kind of did. Francis did a moonsault, which people seem to pop for, but um, it wasn't the spot fest that you normally get with opening matches. It was good enough, but I wouldn't say it was totally good. If you're talking about most important matches of the week for TNA, I don't think this makes the top five. So
Mm.
like, it's good. There's nothing
Yeah,
wrong with it. But unless you're a fan of either guy, you could skip this one. I think. Mark, any thoughts?
yeah, yeah. I was going to ask you before I got to this match. Would you say that first lockdown, if you had to gear somebody towards lining them up towards talking about what TNA was in its heyday and being that kind of alternative in the era that it was in, would you point them towards that first lockdown as a perfect like picture of that?
Yeah, I think that'd be fair. It's one of the more unique and original ideas that TNA ever had. They incorporated it into their six sides of the ring, and they made sure that each match kind of did feel like its own thing. Now, some matches survive the test of time better. There are a lot of people that don't realize that the first ever Lethal Lockdown match happened in 2005 because it was like Sean Waltman, BG James, and I don't know, Ron Killings maybe versus like or yeah versus like Jeff Jarrett and maybe Monty and Kip James. It it wasn't a match you'll ever remember. So like some matches survive the test of time better than others. Um, but yeah, so um, it was fine. Who was it? Francis gets the win. Elijah ends up
Yeah,
getting the last dance, so to speak, by clocking him over the head with a guitar, which kind of seemed nonsensical. Like if you're gonna have him win, have him win.
I had no doubt that they probably deliver these two, particularly in these matches, fared well individually in other scenarios. So I was confident coming when they came together they deliver, and it was one of the longer matches on the show. Um, so I thought they got it done. You booking it though? Where you taking these guys? Are you putting them off for good, or you bringing them back together for a reason? I know you've been kind of advocating for Francis in a useful capacity to be in a tag team for a while. So
I'm still on that mindset. Francis is not a solo main eventer to me.
yeah,
His look, he looks like he's wearing sweatpants and a oversized jersey, like he's afraid people will notice he's gained 20 pounds. He does not have a superstar look to him, and until he gets that, he's not going to be a guy that I would say could headline. You have to have the look to go along with the talent. And I don't know if he's a talent enough. Like if we're talking like WWE, New Japan, AEW, I don't think you even whisper the idea of him being a main eventer because he's not that good. But in TNA, there's not a lot of depth in regards to talent. So like maybe with the right look, he could be. But if he's going to just keep with the sweatpants and jersey idea, I think Moose and him as a tag team as former NFL players makes the most sense. You can
yeah,
limit his limitations and give Moose some time off while still advertising him for matches because you could have him, parlay with AJ Francis and do all that fun stuff. But until he decides to change up his look, yeah, tag team with Moose. And for Elijah, I would find him a tag team partner too because it does not seem like they're going to go to him anytime soon in the main event scene. And if the idea of Trey Miguel facing off with Mustafa at Bound for Glory does come to fruition, he's not going anywhere near the international title for a while too. So like you might as well hook him up in a tag team because it does seem like in a few months or so, the Hardys could be taking a break, they could be retiring, they could be heading to WWE, who knows? And you're going to need other tag teams, and I think Elijah could be someone who, if you pair him with the right guy, could get you some pretty decent tag team action and maybe a few tag team title wins. And it seems like Cody Deaner, as the hometown man, is now kind of buddying up to Elijah. We'll see more on the live edition of Impact tomorrow. We're recording this on Wednesday, so like we'll see. But yeah, I would do tag teams for both men for right now and keep them away from one another for right now. Then we move on to the knockout tag team titles. Ironically enough, we have Allie and who ends up being Kira Hogan taking on Heather and M by Elegance in one of the worst matches of the night. We haven't really seen Kira Hogan in 5 or 6 years since she left for AEW, and sadly, it looks like she's not really gotten too much better. Allie is already somebody that I don't think is a good worker, so like you were struggling right there to find a way to make that work. The Elegance brand as a tag team, I think, is kind of in a situation where they'll never look as good as they could because they keep wrestling some very subpar talents. Rosemary missed the match because of an injury. So, like, the one person that could have probably gotten the most out of the Elegance brand wasn't even there. Kira's a better worker than Allie, but I don't think Kira's good enough for being a tag team champion. But they were desperate enough for anyone, and they ended up snagging Kira. So, like, hey, there's something. I would have rather them go with who is it? Gabby Furza. Is that who they just signed? Let's see, Forza. Yeah, Gabby Forza. I would have gone with Gabby Forza instead of Kira Hogan. Kira Hogan has value to the roster. She's good enough that she can work a few matches and flush out a roster. But I think going with less known stars has to be what TNA does. Getting Joe Alonzo and the other kid that they got, which we'll talk about later on in the review, um, were the right picks. Getting Gabby Forza was the right pick. Using BDE is the right pick. What they're doing with Leon Slater is the right pick. What they're doing with Ricky Sosa is the right pick. I don't think going back to Kira Hogan, who when she was in TNA was the new young hotness. She's now 31. This we're no longer in a situation where we're like, oh, I wonder what she could be. She is what she'll be. Like she's gotten as good as she'll ever get. Is that good enough? And I feel like I kind of, I harken back to, I don't know if you ever saw Jim Cornette's introductory press conference when he joined TNA in 2006. You ever see that? So in the 2006, Jim Cornette gets hired. He comes out as a new face of TNA management. And basically, he cuts this promo saying if you can't have great matches, draw a TV number, or put butts in seats and sell merch, so it's like those four things, then I don't have any use for you. And that's how TNA needs to go about their product right now. If you can't draw a number, if you can't sell a ticket, if you can't sell merch, if you can't put on a great match, you should not be on this roster. And I feel like Allie falls into that category. I feel like Hero Hogan falls into that category. Their value isn't there. They don't really have much one besides being former TNA talents who were once fired by AEW and weren't good enough to get hired anywhere else. When that's the case, I think you just skip the talent. Find someone else, put Gabby Forza in there, and at least maybe you can develop someone. Because TNA's development for the last 3 or 4 years have been atrocious. It's been fucking garbage.
Yeah, it's good to be on. I mean, it does a couple things. One, it uh, allows you to, I think, fully play more into whatever financial situation you're in terms of maintaining these individuals in better contracts. Uh, on top of, like you said, they just need young, fresh faces. I was just gonna ask, mostly because we were talking about women they could have brought back, and it kind of would have been in the realm of roles. It could have been like a thing where she kind of sent her from the quote unquote undead realm in a way. But I don't know if she's still in play when I'm talking about Swan. Is Sue Young still wrestling?
I think so. The last time I checked, she was, yeah. I don't know with whom, but it's not anyone big.
Yeah.
I wouldn't have mind seeing a Sue Young return. Sue Young, at least has that aesthetic that fits what Rosemary does. Uh,
Yeah, that
so
could have been
like,
a good. Yeah, they could have did a little video where she kind of did a little video, sent in a message, and then was like, "I summoned somebody from the realm," and then she came up with the ask some young stuff. But to your point, I like Kiera Hogan. I think she's cool. I think she has history that she could do. Obviously, she's never been KO champ, and obviously, I would imagine that's not a direction you would want her to go, but not exactly a ball right now.
well,
On top of her having natural history with Steels, who seems to be potentially going on her own as well. So
it, I any other era of the knockouts, I would be like, no, there's no reason for Kira Hogan to be world champion because the talent is so stacked. That's not the case anymore. We saw maybe one of the worst knockouts title matches in some time at Lockdown. Now, bless the women, they put on the best they could. I don't want to say that it was like an all-time stinker, but as far as knockouts world title matches goes, it was not so well received. Hang on, that's not right. Hang on, I'm looking up something. Ugh. There we go. Yeah, so the cage match score on it is a 4.54, 4.78, sorry. So like, I don't know. Is Kira a better worker than Elena Black? Yeah, probably. Is she a better worker than Zaya Brookside? That's the hope. So like, could she be a world champion in this era? Yeah, probably. She's got a low bar to clear. It's not like we have a lot of
Yeah,
top talent. I think the two best workers are going to be in the Knockouts Television title finale on Thursday when M takes on Jada Stone. I think those are your two best talents. So like, you know,
a thin herd to spread across three titles:
yeah,
tag, knockouts, and TV. So yeah, they gotta they might end up having to do a reverse thing they did with Tessa and let one of the men take the one of the women's title. But my kid for those listening. But yeah, it's I'm interested to see what they do here. I do appreciate the fact that she's actually somebody that kind of wanted to come back to TNA as opposed to lamenting it and potentially talking about like it was a stepping stone for maybe go somewhere else. So I did appreciate that.
I do wonder how much of her wanted to come back to TNA and how much of her only had the option to come back to TNA. It's kind of like Santana when he left AEW. He left AEW and came back to TNA not because he was so in love with the promotion or the money or he didn't have anywhere else to go. He had to come to TNA for anyone else to notice him. And I wonder if that's what Kira Hogan's forced to do. You know, Allie came back to TNA for that same reason. So like, I don't celebrate these guys joining TNA because it's the best option. Because if they had a better contract or a better offer, they wouldn't be here. And that's part of the issue with TNA at the moment is you can't say that they are appealing to talent who have options because they're not. They're losing talent to other options. So that's the unfortunate. Like, here's the brass tacks of it all. If Eddie Edwards was in his prime when AEW debuted and was a free agent, he wouldn't be here. I don't think he'd be here. If they were offering him a big enough contract, he would have left a long time ago. They're just not offering him a contract because they don't think that he provides anything that they don't already have. So that's the kind of the issue here with talent joining up with TNA who have name value. If they're coming here, it's because no one else wants them, or because they burnt bridges elsewhere. So like, we'll see what ends up happening with all that. Next matchup is the escape the cage match between Kaz and Moose. This was again fine. I think they're really stretching with how they're trying to promote Kaz as the king of TNA. It feels very forced. It's not exactly what I would call a home run idea. Moose ends up losing when he spears Kazarian out of the cage. A very run of the mill spot, but one that we don't see a lot in TNA. So like at least it had that going for it. But as far as matches go, this was fine, completely fine, but nothing else. Any thoughts on this one, Marcus?
We've seen that finish to a cage match before, but like you said, it was unique to TNA. Not gonna really, you kind of already cleared. You're not gonna get a bad match from these two, whether it's straight up and down singles or the cage. Um, so yeah, but like you said, I think there's a way to go with Kaz, and we'll talk about that as we get talk about stuff later. Don't necessarily know where you go with moves. I know you mentioned about him taking a break. Uh, and there could be some options for him to have a couple of feuds coming up here after this if they don't continue to run the program with Kaz. But yeah, I forgot to ask you this at the beginning. How did you like the cage in itself?
I like the cage. It feels like they took the 1996-97 WWE cage and slapped the top of the 1999-2000 era cage on top of it. So I
Mm-hmm.
thought it had a lot of uniqueness and originality. It's definitely the first time we've ever seen this style cage in wrestling. It has
Yeah,
elements that are of other promotions, absolutely. But I would not say that it's a one-to-one recreation of a WWE cage. But they also totally got away from doing a standard cage that we had seen. years and years and years prior. So I
Yeah,
liked it. What about you? Did you like it?
yeah, I dug it. I thought it made it come off unique. Like you said, it is an amalgamation of things, but it did still feel like unique in itself. And it would have been easy to, to what you just said about, just doing a regular old smegular cage, but this meant something because that was, bringing back this event. This is a key event for TNA. And, with it being a unique stipulation that all matches are inside this thing, you kind of want to, give the cage a little bit of pop or flair, if you will, of its own. And I think, like you said, the style of it and blacking it out, I think did that. So,
I think they did that as well. So all in all, a pretty decent idea. Then we got the Knockouts title match. It was a bad match. It wasn't good. Alanya Black, Elena Black looked as good as she'll ever look. Zaya Brookside looked fine at times in this. She's not aware of her surroundings, and you can tell that a lot of what she does. It, there's paused moments in her movement. There's hesitation in her steps. She's not confident, and that shows in her work. Elena, however we want to pronounce her fucking name, is just not a good athlete, and so she's slow off the draw. She doesn't really have a lot of great lift in her legs. She's a good enough actress that you believe what you're watching is happening to her, but there's just not enough there, talent or athleticism wise, from either woman, where this should have been on a pay per view card. They need to get the belt off of this woman. We've seen what she can do. We've been seeing what she can do for years, and it's not good. But unfortunately, they keep getting rid of the talent who could carry this belt. So I don't know. Elena did get busted open. That was a moment that a lot of fans seemed to enjoy. It wasn't a good match, but there were some moments in this match. Same with the Moose and Kazarian match when he did the Spanish fly off the top of the cage that people really enjoyed. But it wasn't the matches themselves, it was the moments. But also, I had this thought in the back of my head heading into lockdown that what TNA needed was those moments for social media engagement, because if you can engage them in social media, you can bring them into the regular show, and then you can sell them to pay-per-views. So I think they did what they needed to do in the smaller, less important matches to draw an audience. But we'll see if that ends up being a bigger thing down the road, and if that's been helpful for them.
yeah. And, and the hashtag wasn't LOL TNA. So
Yeah, yeah. So so
these
like
days, that's the best takeaway from these pay per views when it's not that.
so they had that going for them. Uh, in the only match that I would define as a baffling decision, Jason Hotch lost to Mustafa Ali. Mila Moore was heavily involved. They seem to be going hard with Mila Moore in this new role, and I like it. I think she's got a unique look. I think she's got some intrigue. I've watched her enough as a wrestler that I think she's good enough that she might be like, maybe she's only a tag team wrestler, right? Maybe she's only good enough in optics. Maybe she's only good enough for 6 or 7 minutes of action per match. But at least she's different. At least she's new. At least she's something original that we haven't seen in other companies before. So I did enjoy that. They are doing a nice angle with Order 4, kind of what they should be doing with the Bloodline, where it seems like while Special Agent Zero and Mila Moore are on board with the direction of the group, Tasha and John Skylar aren't, which may lead them to leave Order 4 and side with Jason Hotch in this divisional war, if you will. And maybe then we'll get another male or two male wrestlers to join Order 4, and maybe John, Jason, and Tasa will form their own group where we can get some more new talent added as well. So like, there's possibility there. Um, Crazy match,
As we expect.
right? Jason accidentally dropped Ali on his head on the corner on a pile driver attempt. That was rough to watch. But other than that, I think Hodge had the spot of the night when he leapt from the top of the cage onto Ali on the floor, and I think they went through a table or something like that.
Yeah, yeah, I like
Cr-
that. I like
Crazy
what he
spot.
did to her. Like, I'm not standing up on this. I'm gonna just this is how I know. I'm gonna sit and yeah. So crazy spot. One of the highlights of the night. We kind of knew going away. I mean, just the match they had originally was great. Probably the match of the month. Um, so this was expected. Got some good time on it. Like you said, the decision was a little bit uh head scratching, but you could always play up that idea that Ali could be like that first loss was a mistake. You can't beat me. You really never could. And they could lump up a situation where it's like, look, the only way you're gonna get another title shot is if you give me something, and that would be you coming back and being exactly what you're supposed to be, which is I guess my lap boy. Uh, in that regard, you and uh John Scholar need to fall in line. But if you win, you get the title back, type of deal. Or they could go in another direction, like you said, keep the division going, break off into their own thing, and then bring in two new people. They got good options with this. They just gotta choose wisely.
I would agree. They got a lot of ideas to go. I do still think they're going Trey and Ali at Bound for Glory, and there is no show between now and Bound for Glory, like no major show. So they're not going to revisit this, but they might do a triple threat with Hotch and Ali and Trey, and that might be a lot of fun. But I think the international title should be defended one on one at big events like Bound for Glory. So we'll see what they end up doing there. They might do something with Jason and John as a solo squad or as a tag team. I think either way, as long as Jason's featured in a profile match that's befitting of his
Yeah,
rise, I think they'll be fine.
this may be the law of diminishing returns because they kind of ran this already. Would you do something? Because I don't know what her skill is. You just mentioned it. Would you do a potential intergender between like the Jason with Tasha and Ali and Mila?
Maybe, maybe. I think if you're thinking Bound for Glory, I would rather do John and Tasha versus Special Agent Zero and Mila.
Yeah.
I think that would be the way to go for Bound for Glory. But
Okay.
if we're just talking about like a general short feud, why not? Right? Like something to get you through a couple episodes of Impact. I think that would work. But for Bound for Glory, I think Mila and Special Agent Zero versus John and Tasha could be a very good pre-show match, if not lower card match, depending on what their roster looks like come then. And that's we have a new international champion, but we also have more new talent. Apparently, the one and only Avery Styles, Mister Get Them Chairs himself, has signed a TNA deal, which again isn't surprising. Nepotism loves to get fueled. I think Avery's got potential, and while I think he's coming up the wrong way, I'm not going to throw the kid out. Him signing with TNA got them some notoriety and some talking points. If they use Avery right and Avery has the talent that people think he could, I think he may be in line for a pretty decent run in TNA until NXT comes calling, which I think seems to be the end game. And I wouldn't be surprised if he signed with TNA because Shawn Michaels told AJ, "Tell your kid to go to TNA for a little bit so he can get some polishing." Could be it. He could also be part of whatever this is going on with OVW if that ever gets settled. He might work in OVW as well for a bit, where he can get some training in while he wrestles for TNA. But yeah, so Avery Styles is in TNA, and now we have a new Styles in the company. So thoughts?
It's always funny because the way you tweet about these shows and this stuff, it's always like its own separate show. Your tweets are. So I got spoiled on everything, but then it was like, looks like Styles' kids got his promo. I was like, hey,
A-
uh,
Anyone who ever says AJ Styles was good at cutting promos is a liar. He didn't always have a bad promo. If you kept it to 30 seconds, he could. I'm gonna beat you up. Grrr. Okay, cool, that worked. If you're trying to have like a Samoa Joe, Christopher Daniels soliloquy, no, it's gonna sound like an idiot. That's like when he was doing the ruthless ways gimmick or whatever it was called. Yeah, the evil ways gimmick. I thought that was the silliest dumb bullshit I've ever seen anyone try to do. Because he's like, I'm dark and depressed now. And I'm like, bitch, you go to Bible, you go to a what is it, Bible studies on Wednesday. Shut the fuck up. No one believes this. No one believes this. Come on. Him as the
Yeah,
babyface hero worked well. All the times he tried to be like tough and cool, I'm like, you're a Dorkosaurus. Shut the fuck up.
me and Chad just randomly walk behind him at a show. Chad goes, "Baby, what's that?" And then I'm like, "Don't give me this."
The gay community. So like yeah,
Oh man,
like we know who AJ is. AJ is not the tough powerhouse. He's not the dark brooding bad boy. He's not. Oh, they tried to make him into Sting and it didn't work. Um, because he never should have been. And I know a lot of people are like, well, he was great in the Bullet Club. No, he seemed like the dorky dad who was hanging out with the 20 somethings who were like going out, pulling chicks, getting ripped. And he's like, yes, fellow young kids. And it's like, AJ, you're like 35. What the fuck are you doing? You look ridiculous. And now he has that stupid fucking beard and his coiffy hair. And it's like, AJ, you look like a mom with a beard. I cannot take you seriously as a tough guy or as a cool guy because you look like a dork. At least when he was like babyface 2004 with the puka shells, at least then it's like, all right, you look like every chud in 2004. So like you're fine because you move like a god, you soar like an angel, and you land like a cat. But you trying to be a personality in itself is hilarious. That's why say whatever you will about Vince Russo. I think AJ Styles' best quote unquote character was his dorky uh, sidekick to Kurt Angle. That was his best character. You don't need to give AJ Styles a character. He's the best wrestler in the world for 20 years. But if you wanted to, it would be the AJ Styles devotee of Kurt Angle. That was
which is
fantastic.
hilarious. Which is hilarious because that's damn near all shoot of what Angle was doing when he was goofier in WWE.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
why it worked. Now, Kurt, however, was a fucking menace. So, like, when he decided he wanted to be serious, everyone's like, no, no, maybe calm down a little bit because, like, you're too scary. But it's also like,
no,
it's also like the Undertaker trying to be like a badass MMA guy. It's like, motherfucker, you hang out with guys named Eight Ball and Crush. You're not scary. You might be tall, and you might have some dumbass tattoos, but no one's actually gonna sit here and be like, "Oh yeah, no, no, I'm definitely afraid of the guy with eyeliner." Okay.
you like those punches? You should see mine. Here comes the money. Like, no, leave, leave now.
Speaking of nepotism, so Avery's in TNA. Him, Joe Alonzo, Gabby Flores, Akira Hogan. They are the four signings from the last 10, 12 days or so, I think. Not
Yeah,
enough, but a good start.
yeah, good start. I'm looking. I keep my eye open for the kid. Happy for him. He was right. You know, if I'm gonna start anywhere, it might as well be a place where my father started and led his legacy. Uh, who knows? He might be more prompt to stay in TNA if a mass exodus is on the horizon, as I think you alluded to on our last show, which could be coming down the pike, and in WWE and some other places. But because one place gets rid of people prematurely, and the other place just stalls them out till their stuff expires. Um, but yeah, like you said, good for a sign. I do like that they use his AJ's Ring of Honor thing for him. I think it fits him actually better for the position he's in. This is my time, and all that. So I dug that. Them bringing out Kazarian as like the evil step uncle type of deal. Uh, to kind of guide him down, like that could be an interesting thing. That might actually get some appearances from AJ because you know TNA loves a good family thing, uh, gimmick, whole storyline. So yeah, like you said, four signings, nothing too majorly big, but we kind of know why that is. So as long as they as long as they usefully use these four, because it's always been interesting when they sign people and you hear about them when they first sign, and then it's like I don't know, they put them on ice. So I hope they get to use these guys properly. Um, and it was cool to see his kid come out there. So
We'll have to see how they use him going forward because we don't know how good this roster really is because the
yeah,
management behind it's not great. Cedric and Leon Slater had a last man standing match that went exactly how I expected it to go. Leon wins back the X Division title. A good match. I would recommend this match only because Leon's gonna have a big to do in Bound for Glory. Now
yeah,
we'll talk about my prediction and how close I came, but for the story aspect alone, I think you should watch this match because it sets up Leon Slater's quest for glory. But also, it was just a good match. I don't think it was match of the night, and I don't think it's going to be in consideration for a year-end award. But I thought it was one of the best matches of
yeah,
the night.
absolutely. I definitely I do a double viewing. Uh, this match I go back and I go back and watch the first match, and then come back and watch this one because it directly. I like what they did because in that match towards the end, specifically the way Alexander won it, he very much dominated Slater in that match. So the way that they did this one, the kid absolutely learned from what happened and was not gonna let it happen again, and actually flipped how the finish went on his head coming off the top match, and was like, "Oh, like now you're gonna be getting these chiropractic backbreakers style." And then I think he finished him with his on 450. So very confident, very much had a game plan, executed accordingly. You weren't gonna get a bad match out of these two, but I like what they did with that. Having said that though, with coming into this match, with you being what I'm dubbing you as TNA Almanac, if you will, of all the stipulations this company has ever put forth, how befuddled were you? And I think we talked about it last show. How befuddled were you with the stipulation that they put here? And do you think what we got to by the end of the night, it helped it in hindsight be better on
No,
paper?
no, absolutely not. These stipulations telegraph the entire story. If
Yeah,
you're trying to sell this as a gimmick, as a concept that people will never see coming, I think you lose a lot when you do these things because if you know any bit of wrestling, like this outcome's never going to happen. It's why I think people talk about the Cody Rhodes and who else is it now? Adam Page can't challenge for the world title or something like that. When we see this kind of stuff, we don't expect it to happen. So when they do have Cody Rhodes never again compete for the world title, that's shocking and simultaneously stupid. Cody was one of your biggest draws in AEW. Now he can't challenge for the biggest belt. So what the fuck's the point? But that was Cody's, great conceptual gimmick, the subversion of expectations, the Disney Star Wars of it all, the dumbassery that he has in his brain. These ideas telegraph the conclusion. I think a better one would have been if Leon Slater, I think you mentioned it last week, was forced to join the system.
yeah,
Because that happens all the time. You win the X Division title, or you become our young boy. You become our bag carrier. You become our manager. You have to make sure we get from town to town, or now that we own your contract, we can get you fired, and then you'll have to go someplace else. Now that may not work for like the more sarcastic fan base, like oh he has to go someplace to make more money. Yeah, fair enough, great joke. But like in the context of the story, at least that makes sense. What I will say though is him with the X Division title works, and him doing what he did made sense. I just wish they would have gone even further because now we have to go through a live impact that I have very little hope for unless they somehow reveal that all these attacks that have been happening on TNA talent in the backstage was Aleister Black. And while I don't think Aleister Black's a great talent anymore, I think Tommy End kind of missed the boat going someplace where he could have been better utilized when he was younger and in better shape. Not that he's in bad shape, but I mean like state of his body shape. He's slower now. His knees aren't as good. Had he gone someplace 10 years ago when he was still at the top of his game, I think his reputation legacy would be a lot better. but now he's kind of only got TNA to go to, so like I wouldn't be surprised if he shows up in TNA. And I still think he's good enough, especially on a roster this lacking, that Tommy N could come in as a top guy. So like, unless that happens, I don't think this live impact's going to have a lot to offer. I was hoping
Yeah,
we would have Leon Slater's coronation, as well as the TNA TV Knockouts Championship finale, and maybe a debut or two. And now it seems like we only have the TV title and maybe a debut if we're lucky.
yeah, it's interesting because I gotta catch up on Impact TV's. But I was unaware that there was a blind attacker doing kind of running back that storyline. Huh?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah.
gotta love that
So
storyline.
yeah, I hope it's hope it's nobody hopping out of van. But
No, I hope they do. I hope they bring resolution to that. It was Tommy End all along.
but that damn face tattoo, hilarious. All them years back, it was me, Flash. It was me all along. No, that'll be interesting when you talk about people attacking people. And we got like baby styles. It'll be cool if in another universe, like Abyss also had a son that was the same age that
Well, funny
Abyss
enough,
had.
Doc Gallows has a son, and he just debuted with MLW.
He got his father's size.
I don't think so.
Uh,
Was it Doc Gallows or Carl Anderson's son? It was one of their sons. I think it was Luke Gallows' kid.
yeah, because I
But
was
like, you know, maybe you could have some there. Frankie
you know what,
Kazarian's son
genetics.
is getting there. Like he's like 14 or so. So like a couple years, Frankie Kazarian's kid could be involved.
You know what's weird? Genetics are funny that way. Like you know whose kid like looks like he could be a big son, but if you look at their parents, like how did that go there? You, know, you seen Kevin Owens' son lately?
No, but I could see that because like Kevin
Like that
Owens
is
kind of looks like a little bit abyss anyway.
yeah, dude. Like that is insane. I'm like that came from the two of you. Okay, that's interesting. But yeah, so it'll be interesting if he pops up in TNA, Tommy Aleister Black, he'll probably get more relevance than he's had in a minute. Unfortunately, both on the AEW and WWE in terms of consistent feature and narrative importance. Anyway, uh, I know that we kind of talked about we don't need the 2-for-1 special when it comes to him and his potential paramour. At this point, we kind of almost need the bodies for the division. But we'll see how it goes. I hope it's not disappointing because they, in the past that kind of been a crapshoot sometimes. Speaking of the best, he'd always be the arbiter of they are here, they are coming. So hopefully, it's a solid surprise. But yeah, yeah, hell of a match. Like you said, go back and watch this. The X Division rally disappoints if ever. So yeah, they got it done. Young man got it done. Got his title back and made sure that his stuff wasn't erased from the history book.
Funny enough, attendance is being reported as anywhere between 45 and 5,000 people. So 4,500 to 5,000 is not a bad number for TNA. Though their Canadian return tomorrow is like less than 1,000 so far. So TNA needs to do better with these shows. They need to do better with these shows. Then we skip right on to the Lethal Lockdown match. I think this is one of the more uninteresting Lethal Lockdown matches I've ever seen.
Mm,
The exact issues I thought would happen happened. They had some moments, some people did some dumb spots. There's a thumbtack spot that Jada and Lish did that I was super impressed by because like that was bold. But I think all in all, this was a fine lockdown match. I would not say that it was must see. I could, if I go through all the lockdown matches, I think this might be, I don't know, 7 or 8, maybe, because there's not as many as you would think. So I, I think it was better than the 2012, 2016 ones. I think it's better than the 2005 one. Let me see here. I'm gonna pull up the whole format. There have been 18. Team Nash. Oh, that's right. It was DDP, BG James, and Sean Waltman versus Jeff Jarrett, Kip James, aka Billy Gunn, and Monty Brown. I think 2026 was better than 2005. Not 2006. Not 2007. I would say it was better than 2008. Not 2009. Not to. I would say it's better than 2010. So what are we on? Like one, two, three. I wouldn't say it was better than the Fortune EV 2.0 one at Bound for Glory. Wasn't better than 2011, 2012. So like we're on to three, right? 2013. I would say was better. They did a one night only. I won't even count it because that wasn't technically a thing. It wasn't better than 2014. They did a 2015 Impact match. I would say it's probably better than that because I don't remember that. I would actually say the Team GFW versus Team TNA one from 2025 was better than this one. So we're up to like
Yeah,
what,
yeah.
four?
One of the lethal lockdowns was just a Garrett Bischoff hazing accident.
Yeah, that was 2012, and this one
Yeah,
is better than that one. I would say this one was better than the Knockouts one from 2016 that Gail Kim, Maria Kanellis, and Velvet Sky versus the Dollhouse. I would say the 2016 Road to Glory show was probably worse than this one. So I would probably put this safely at number. We'll just say seven total. We'll take the one I didn't count and say that 2026 was better than that one. So I'd say this is a top 10 lockdown at worst. But also the lethal lockdown matches are wildly hit or miss in terms of like quality. So that's not saying much.
yeah.
Um,
This is
yeah,
TNA's war games essentially, right?
it is. They built
Yeah,
this match around Ricky Sosa though. This was a Ricky Sosa showcase, which is why it was surprising when the system won. Sosa was everywhere. He was the highlight of the night in this match. He was doing all sorts of nonsense. Ultimately, though, the system did end up winning, and I think that was the wrong move for Sosa. So,
yeah. We if anybody didn't listen, me and Chad literally booked this match basically perfectly.
hmm
Um, Outside of all like direct detail from detail to spot. Um, Obviously you get Lish and Stone involved because they got that daredevil spirit. But you don't take it too extreme with them. I called the spot about Edwards being up for something big going through the table and Lish making a sacrifice play, or the other way around. Uh, but we both agreed on that. Uh, Bosa gets the win, gets the pin, and he climbs to the top of the cage as everybody goes out saying bang, bang. That just seemed like the no brainer scenario there. I don't know what maybe they wanted them the group to get a win coming off the Moose thing. I don't know.
they might be setting up a situation with Sosa and Eddie for Bound for Glory.
Mm,
That wouldn't be the worst thing because Eddie does pin Sosa, so it could be that that's where they want to go to give Sosa a good test in the ring to see what he can do against one of TNA's better ring generals. Because even though I think Eddie has lost a step and isn't what he once was, I think if you're trying to see what a young talent can do, I think Eddie's still your best bet. So I think he's right in line with where he needs to be, with who he needs to be with for Bound for Glory. Uh, I was looking at the cage ceiling though, and it looks like they did the same kind of bar setup for the ceiling that they did for the sides. So like that could be why we didn't get anything really cool off the top of it, and that's probably the one thing I would have changed. I would have had
yeah,
the chain link fence on the top of it, so like that way you could still maneuver around up there. But they made the decisions they made, you know, and that's life. Bound for Glory is coming from October 11th, or coming from Tampa, Florida on October 11th. So that'll be something. They'll be at the what is that Yingling Center? Is that what that's called? So like they have a history in Florida. Like you know Orlando's one of their stomping grounds. So like they're kind of coming home, even though I think Tampa's like 2 hours away from Orlando. So now we get to the main event time. I will say this: this was a bad main event. It was a lot worse than I thought it would be, and it ended pretty suddenly when the action felt like it was starting to pick up. But I kind of expected that, which is why the idea of what we pitched last week was so obvious. The Nemeths end up winning. In hindsight, the finale makes more sense than I think on initial replay because he gets I think it was Matt or Jeff. It's one of the Hardy Boys, obviously. I think he gets Matt, and he goes up and he hangs there and he pulls him down just in time. Yeah, it was Matt because Jeff was trying to crawl through the wreckage to get to him. And maybe that wasn't supposed to be how it ended. Maybe it was. But I think what fans are truly upset with, and they may not be articulating it correctly, was it felt like the match had finally started to pick up when the finish came. I think the finish made a lot of sense, just not in the context of the time and the pace of the match, because it felt like it was just starting to hit that second and third gear. But the match ended the way it did. The Nemesis are once again tag team champions. I don't think this is the wrong move to make. I think the Nemesis are better workers than the Hardys right now, and I think if you want to get the most out of the tag team division and highlight the tag team titles the most, this is the way to go. And I think if you head into lockdown, Bound for Glory with Nemeth as a double champ, then you set the stage for Leon Slater to not only win big, but also another young wrestler to also win big. You could have Sosa and BDE tag together. You could have BDE and Swan. You could have Hotch and Skyler, even though Skyler's pushing 40. You could have some guys who beat the Nemeth, and then Slater beat Nick Nemeth in the main event, and set some guys up for success following Bound for Glory. So like there's potential with them as double champs, or
Yeah,
as Nick with double champs.
yeah. Like I mean, look, I'm a big fan of the Hardys. We know what they mean to TNA. We know what they meant to TNA. The fact that they all going at the rate and pace that they going at their age with everything that they've been through. Uh, but it was kind of obvious that they was kind of just not up to par in a way. Uh, and I think a part of that was the fact that like I'm got to ask you this: like if somebody had a drinking game that you had to drink every time there was a twist of fate, would they be in A right now? They'd be at halfway in the grave.
No, they wouldn't be halfway in the grave or in AA. They'd be fucking dead. That seems to be
Yeah,
all they can do anymore. And I think when that's the case, you either take them off the road for a little bit, maybe send them to Mexico to get some stem cell and heal their bodies a little bit, or you separate them and just see what they can do in other aspects. I don't think the Hardy Party is over as far as like a tag team goes. I think they still have a lot of value as a tag team in TNA, more so anywhere else. But I also think they've been around the TNA World Tag Team title for 3 years, I want to say. And so getting them away from the tag team title belts is, I think, imperative. Now, here's the funniest thing. Let's see when their first World Tag Team title run was. They Their first tag team title run happened in 2015 and it lasted for 53 days. Would you like to take a guess on when their second tag team title run happened? Give me a year. Take a guess on when you think their second tag team title run was.
second tag team title one. Man, doggone stinks.
If you think about iconic moments in TNA that we laugh at, you'll be able to figure it out.
Iconic moments in TNA that we laughed at.
I'll give you a hint. That's what you get for cornhole.
Yeah, off of Decay.
Yes, Bound for Glory 2016, when that random
Yeah,
redneck rolled up
yeah.
to fight
Nobody's
Decay.
timeline rigged. It's a Willie.
For those who don't remember or don't know, in 2016 at Bound for Glory, Decay had been running roughshod, and at one point they found a random bald redneck that they apparently assaulted in a less than appropriate manner.
Consensual way. Yeah.
Thank you. That's the word I was looking for. Consensual way. So at Bound for Glory, they're doing their Broken War, I think is what they called it. And Jeff was, the Will o' the Wisp and Itch Witch and all them. Matt was doing his brokenness, and Crazy Steve and Rosemary were beating up people. At a random point in the match, the fucking redneck dude showed up, and he's like, "That's I'll teach you to cornhole me," or whatever the hell he said, and he jumps on like one of their backs, and then he gets like
Uh,
plastered. So like
uh,
that was their second title run.
oh my
But
God, man. Yeah.
so like that was so let's see. So we have 53 days. Let's just do some simple math. Where's the calculator option? I don't see the calculator option. There it is. I knew it was there. All right, so 53 days for the first run, and then what do we got here? Nope, gotta go up, and 152 days for their second run. By, they never actually lost the second set of tag team titles. They just vacated them because they left the company. They then come back, right? They came back and they won their third set at Bound for Glory in 2024. They now have a cumulative of 709 days. They are the longest combined set of tag team champions. Not the longest tag team champions, because that's still James Storm at 787 days individually. But as far as the tag team goes, the Hardys have held the belts for more than anyone. And in the 2.5 years, or actually in less than 2 years, because they won the belts for the third time at Bound for Glory 2024. In that time span, from Bound for Glory 2024 to August of 2026, they have held the belts for 504 days. It is okay for us to move on from the Hardy Boys as tag team champions, even if you don't want to move on from them as a tag team. So, like, it's okay to move on. It's okay for them to do something different.
Yeah. And we seemed to call it last week. Like the perfect thing to do would be obviously you got Slater, going after them as he should, and I think there's a part and it's not me trying to save the asinine stipulation, which telegraph one of the most hardline telegraphable stipulations you'll see in wrestling. But the fact that, quote unquote, his legacy being on the line in one single match is, I guess, a great motivator for him to put everything on the line the same night, uh, to potentially go for the biggest glory. You could say is what was how that went. But uh, that's what I meant to ask you about that whole deal. For you, if there's a an argument to be brought up that, uh, let's say Alexander goes up and be like, you might as well just hand the title back to me because he just traded in on the same night for a shot and that whole deal. Would you go with that, or you like back of the line squirt?
We're talking about with Slater for the world title or X Division.
Yeah, because it seemed like he cashed in the title as a chip to get
Right.
the whole, you know, yeah,
I think if we're talking about him going for the world title, right? Talked about this last week. I think you I think you end up doing what we pitched last week, where Nick and Ryan win. Maybe Ryan and Jeff Hardy are on the outside, or Ryan and Matt Hardy are on the outside. And as Nick's about to do something to whomever, Jeff or Matt, Leon Slater comes in, cashes in the option C. Jeff hits a twist of fate on Nick, or maybe Jeff's on the top of the cage. Leon Slater hits Nick with a move as he's then cashing in the option C. Jeff hits a swanton off the top of the cage onto Nick. Nick gets up. Slater hits him with whatever. Then he hits him with his own 450 swanton or senton, pins him, wins, and that's how you end lockdown. That's what I would have done. You know, If that's the
Yeah,
story you're going, you hit them with something that no one sees coming, especially when your main event ends the way it does. If your main event ends the way it does, like we saw, where it's like it never gets out of its first gear, when things finally feel like they're starting to come together, it ends abruptly. This is the kind of moment that saves the show. People often forget. What was it? New Year's Revolution 2006 was a terrible fucking show. It was boring, uninteresting. John Cena goes the distance in the Elimination Chamber, and as he's laying there bloodied and beaten, all of a sudden you hear the din 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 din. On this day, I see clearly. And Edge comes out, and then all of a sudden the arena wakes up for the first time all night. Vince McMahon takes the briefcase, Edge comes down, Cena puts up a fight, then Edge hits him with I think it was two spears, hooks the leg, and the crowd loses their fucking mind. It's one of the reasons why people look at Edge today the way they do because he elicited such a reaction that has kept fans intrigued for decades because of that one moment. Now, subsequent cash-ins lost their value because they were always handled in ways that were kind of hot spotted with young talent that couldn't afford such a microwaved heat. Like you want to slow build, slow burn, slow boil the win. Stone Cold winning his first world title, Sting winning his first world title, Goldberg winning his first world title, are moments that will always be bigger than other moments because they felt earned. When you have, Jeff Hardy's first, or not Jeff Hardy's first, like CM Punk's first, that wasn't well received. It was a moment. People were like, oh, that's cool. But for the most part, cash-ins don't work to elevate new stars unless they're done in a way that makes that new star feel like he's saving the day. Edge saved the day at the night of New Year's Revolution 2006. And while I did not expect this match to end as badly as it did, I did think that there was an option and a possibility for Leon Slater to come in and save a match that I thought at best would be ho hum and at worst would be an all time stinker. Either way, I thought this was going to be a match that needed to be bailed out to some degree. Not as bad as it ended up being, but even at its peak, it wasn't going to be, fucking Kurt Angle, Samoa Joe. So, like, you could have had Leon Slater be the hero of the day. And when you make a hero of the day in those kinds of moments, they last. And I think TNA really bungled not putting the belt on him at lockdown and instead building up a litany of possible contenders going into Bound for Glory instead of, well, Leon Slater's now chasing. And listen, that's great. Rule of thumb is, heroes who chase make money. I think if you had done an intrigue angle where you had all these heels vying for Leon Slater, you could have done this great who will be Leon's first true challenge. Would it be Eddie? Would it be Mustafa? Would it be Dolph Ziggler or Nick Nemeth? You could have done, the Hardys involved. You could have had a lot of intrigue heading into Bound for Glory with the debut of the Leon Slater era. And considering I don't think Leon Slater is going to be here much into 2027, assuming his contract status is what it is, and they don't re-sign him, you get the most time with him as champion now, as opposed to what you saw with Joe Hendry and Mike Santana, where they both win the belt at Bound for Glory, and then by July they're in a new promotion. So I think they fumbled the
yeah,
ball here to make a new megastar in TNA.
yeah. I was because I know you've always had a issue. I mean, going to your point about the New Year's Revolution, that was the first I think Money in the Bank cash in ever did.
Yes.
Uh, because Vince came out with Edge and that whole deal, and that ended that crazy reign that Cena had the first time that he ever was WWE champion. But because I know about the Slater, I think I was more so inclined about like looking at what you do with the X Division thing now. Because if Cedric Alexander comes on the next show and goes, like I know it's vacant now, but you might as well kind of get an X Division championship back to me because he just immediately turned in the chip for a world title shot. He didn't even care enough about the title
Mm-hmm.
to go a little bit as champion for doing it. Just on some heel, like I didn't deserve to lose. No way. He backed me into that stipulation, whatever, whatever. That whole deal. Uh, because essentially the option she has always kind of been a, heads up type of deal as opposed to cashing in like a Money in the Bank
Hmm.
scenario.
Yeah.
So yeah,
I think with what you do with the X Division title, I like the idea of making said the focal point of what you do next. I think he's in the right area on the roster. He's a former cruiserweight champion, former X Division champion. He's a good worker, maybe not a great worker, but he's a good enough worker that if you put just about anyone in the ring with him, he's going to have either a very good match or a very great match. We've seen the magic he can make with Ali. We know that he's good enough that he can run with some guys who aren't that good on their own. So I think making him the fulcrum of the X Division going forward, even if he's not the champion, is a smart idea, at least in the interim. The question then turns to who then gets the X Division title. I think you have a chance to remake an era by who you pick next. I don't have a name. I don't have a name who I would be like Joe Alonzo, um, whatever the fuck AJ Styles' kid's name is, Alan Styles Jr. I don't fucking remember. But like, you could have any number of guys take that spot as the next guy. And having said kind of be that gatekeeper to put him through his paces and to make sure he's the right guy behind the scenes is a smart move. But on screen, you have him basically demanding the X Division title. Maybe you start to do the idea where you give him the X Division title. But then you have Santino or whomever go, that's not how we're going to do this. So and so has a right to this belt. So, we're going to do, you two tonight on Live Impact, or do a Bound for Glory X Division Battle Royal. Do a Gauntlet Battle Royal like they used to do back in the day. 20 years ago, they debuted the Kevin Nash Open Invitational Gauntlet Battle Royal for Bound for Glory. I think no, it's the Open Invitational Kevin Nash X Division Battle Gauntlet Battle Royal for Bound for Glory, and the winner got a bowling trophy. It's hilarious. But like, if you do that, maybe you bring back Austin Aries for it. Maybe you bring in some stars from overseas and down south. I know Mystico's currently working with AEW, but like, he's also working with MLW, so maybe you get him for a night. Maybe you get, Enzo Amore. I don't know. But maybe you do a 10 or 20 man X Division match where the winner is either Cedric or Avery Styles or Joe Alonzo or whomever, or maybe it's someone we don't know about. Maybe it's someone new. But either way, I think that's the way you go. You have Cedric basically repping the division against anyone and everyone. Even if he's not the champion, you can be the uncrowned champion. And you can go into this match kind of with the idea that he gets the belt back. There is another idea. It's not nearly as good wrestling wise, but it may be more fun storyline wise. Maybe Ryan Nemeth wins the belt. And then he spends the next, 6, 7, 8, well, actually probably closer to 2 months, because I think it's late October they're doing Bound for Glory. Let me double check that real quick. 6 weeks. Say 6 weeks, because it's October 11th. Maybe you do where for the next 6 weeks, not Nick, Ryan does a open invitational weekly X Division match, and every time like he comes out and maybe you do like former champions come in, so like Tigre Uno, and he comes in, and then Ryan pulls a hammy before the match starts, so he can't wrestle that night. And then the next week he comes in, he goes, I'm going to do it against any legendary world champion. Then Jeff Hardy comes out, and then Nemeth's like, my knee, I twisted it going up the stairs. I can't. And you just do this for 6 weeks heading into Bound for Glory, where he has to then defend the tag team belts with his brother, and then he has to defend the X Division title. And then maybe you have Cedric beat him there. Maybe you have Avery beat him. Maybe you have, whomever beat him. AC.
AC Navarro.
Oh, Casey. Casey Navarro would be a great name. Casey would be a great name. Maybe you do. Because I completely forgot about Casey, and I forgot about Ricky Sosa. All these names
Yeah,
could be involved as well. But I like the idea either of Cedric demanding to be being the X Division champion heading into Bound for Glory, where you crown a new X Division champion, or you crown a new X Division champion on the live Thursday show, where Ryan wins the belt in contrived manners, and then you spend the next 6 weeks having him duck, dodge, and run from the X Division.
yeah, they can. They can. I can't believe I'm saying this. I'm not trying to. Rarely do we try to lend this person credibility. No personal feelings, of course, but they could actually make a interesting little quirk here with the suit, where she tries as much as she can to placate this behavior from him until she gets pissed off. Like, okay, look, you got to stop being a little bitch and get out there and defend this damn fight.
You could also have her protecting Ryan. Like,
Yeah,
well, he's hurt. He can't wrestle tonight. And you end up doing some kind of contrived Team Santino versus Team Daria at Bound for Glory, where the losers no longer able to run TNA. And Ryan's ducking and dodging and the fake injuries could play into why this match has to happen for Santino and Daria. Personally, at this point TNA is kind of in this weird spot where I don't think anyone they sign is going to either hurt them too badly or help them too much right now. And I think maybe you look at I don't want to bring him in, but like the notoriety he would bring, right? And the fact that he's been popping up on other avenues like what was it, Dark Side of the Ring, and he has ties to TNA. I think maybe you bring in Jim Cornette for a few weeks. He's certainly still someone people know, and while he's said some salacious things in the past, I think that kind of gets looked past a little bit considering his views on the current administration. So like I think he balances himself out a little bit. But I also think that TNA's in this weird place where you kind of have to find guys like Jim Cornette, kind of like what MLW is doing. They keep trying to find guys that they can rehabilitate and bring in. So like, we'll see what happens.
yeah.
They need better. The reason why I suggest Cornette is they need better leadership. They need better on-screen characters. Daria's terrible. Santino, I think Santino, if he was willing to wrestle regularly, semi-regularly, like once or twice a month, right? I think has value. You put him with the hometown man, you get a little comedy tag team going, fun stuff. As an on-screen authority figure, he's a joke, and that makes the position seem like a joke. And I really was hoping TNA would fork up money to land Mick Foley to do that job because I thought Mick Foley would have been a great commissioner. So I think you need a new commissioner, and if it's not Cornette, it needs to be somebody.
Uh, um, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, Hail Mary here.
Okay,
If you could do it,
all right,
would you put talk about a legacy narrative here? If there was no fallout and he actually wanted to do it, would you put Styles in that position?
sure. I mean, so here's the thing: AJ is a flat earther. He's a Trump publican. He
Yeah,
thinks Planned Parenthood puts dead fetuses in a closet. He's dumb. As a human being, he's stupid. He will bring wrestling fans in, however, and I don't just mean conservative fans. A lot of liberal fans love AJ Styles because of what he did to his body. He is one of the, and I say this with understanding that other people are going to have different criteria and that other forms of wrestling are valid and will have their own defenders. I think ubiquitously, I think without even a discussion, there is no way you do not say from 1844 to now, across hundreds of thousands of promotions, across billions of people and millions of wrestlers, that AJ Styles is not a top 10 wrestler historically speaking. I don't mean for the era. I don't mean for modern wrestling. I don't mean for the last 60 years. I mean since fucking day one where they pretended to fight each other for money in the carnies of I don't know, Oklahoma or whatever the fuck it was called in 18 whatever. AJ Styles is a top 10 wrestler of all time. Fundamentally speaking. He's crisp, he's smooth, he performs like butter dripping off a pancake. Like he is incredible. And the most liberal wrestling fans still love AJ Styles because of his abilities. And the most conservative
yeah,
wrestling fans will love him because they never not loved him. So even though AJ's got a little
yeah,
problematic behavior and he's a nepo god with his kid, he has enough, I think, in terms of name value. And I can't think of the terminology that they use for like when you have like some L's you can give. He's got enough L's still to give though that he can come in and have a bit of an
yeah.
impact. That being said, I don't see it happening.
Yeah, it'll never happen. But the only reason why I said that, I feel like I like Santino. I like my he's hilarious. I don't like seeing my quote unquote authority figures being punked.
Hmm.
So they need like a Nick Aldis type of character, and Styles is not so. Styles got enough history with the company where he could take pop shots at past regimes because he was under them, while also being somebody that you can't pump, but you could have somebody like Kazarian coming up there and messing with him, or turn little seeds in the past and then stuff like that, or potentially accusing him of the nepotism thing with his son and that playing a role. It'll actually be a great little story element to have Styles there in that position by himself, not needing a suit or whatever the freak they got going on now. But I think that'll be great. Actually, putting somebody with historical context with TNA in that position would be really good. I like on that old Styles or somebody like a Foley who would also be good, but I think he's more. I wonder how much of him going to AEW had to do with also sticking it to WWE.
I actually think it
Um,
had more to do with the fact that AEW has a lot of charitable causes as
yeah,
opposed to other, because like Mick Foley's a big supporter of RAIN, which is it's like the rape, abuse, incest, something or other. It's like the network for people who've been sexually abused. He's been a big
yeah,
proponent of that kind of healthcare and that kind of support. And I don't know if AEW does anything with that, but like I do know that he's been supporting very big causes in his career. Plus, I think AEW
yeah,
with their toy line and all that, he's a big proponent of Santa Claus, and I think you have the financial backing to be able to help him be Santa Claus whenever he's with your
yeah.
promotion. Now, Marcus, I got
Indeed,
a name for you. I got a name for you.
indeed.
I thought about, hey, well, what about Kurt Angle? He was a Raw GM, so he's got like chops for that. But then I realized there was someone who was a deputy commissioner back under Cornette. He's got real life political ties. He's got the girth and size, if you will, to not be punked by anyone. And I think he'd be open to it because, I think his political career might be on a little bit of a hiatus. Matt Morgan.
I was hoping you were gonna say that. Uh, I like that. I dig it. I think it would also be really good.
He is
Hail
like,
Mary, because this may be the closest we get to get him back in the TNA ring.
right? Now
Monty
he is.
Brown.
Oh, ooh, oh,
Yeah,
oh, I like that. That one I like. That one I really like. Like Jim Cornette was like, oh, he's his name. Like, oh, Matt Morgan. There's if you brought in Monty Brown as your new commissioner and you debut him with like because like Monty was exciting as a promo. He wasn't a great promo. He's like Goldberg. He brought charisma and energy and like yeah. But like I don't really remember a Monty promo, but I always remember enjoying a Monty promo, and that's the difference between being charismatic and a good promo. Like Bret Hart had some good promos. He wasn't charismatic, right? Sting was both great promos and charismatic. You bring Monty, you give him a 90-second promo, and then you end it with him hitting a pounce on somebody. Sign me up 52 times a week. Let's do this. Or 52 times a year. I would take a 90-second Monty Brown commissioner bit for an entire year. I think that would be incredible. That is my new pipe dream. Monty Brown commissioner. Let's do it. I was thinking Kurt Angle, like who else, like Jeff Jarrett maybe if he leaves AEW anytime soon. Maybe you call up
yeah,
Gail Kim though. Like I don't think she's in too good a standing anymore, especially with
yeah.
the wrestling fans. Like yeah, Monty. That's what I want. I want Monty. That's my new
I just,
more than a new owner, more than Jeff Jarrett wrestling for the world title in TNA one last time, more than Sting reversing age by 40 years and rejoining TNA, more than anything. I want Monty Brown as a commissioner on TNA. That's my new. That's what I
yeah,
want for Christmas. Santa, if you're listening,
yeah,
Monty.
yeah. I just like somebody that got history with the company. Like I even throw in, and also I think last time I heard about him, he was having catching a good foothold in the real estate game. Like even somebody like a James Storm, who could literally be in the back having a cold beer, and somebody come and you know Give him some hassle. He can still like give people the last call and then give him a match or something like that. But somebody with some historical context, I think, would be great. That didn't need a second, and we don't need any more authority narratives uh, in TNA. They got them out of the way. They did them to death in the early 2000s, mid to late 2000s. So uh, yeah, but Monty Brown, Matt Morgan, and kind of so on and so forth after that. Are just great picks, but they do need to refresh it in that regard. I think to your point that you made, that whole thing about Ryan Nemmel, because that would be Nick having the world, them having a tag, and them being the X division. You talk about unlikely scenario, but of course you would give. Of course, this little prick would have two titles, right?
Well, that's the selling point.
Uh, yeah,
Now, what I will say, I am not in favor of James Storm as a GM, but there's a good reason why. James Storm in 2026 alone has already wrestled 16 matches. In 2025, he wrestled 54. He's pushing 50. He's 49 years old. I don't want to see James Storm sign as a commissioner. I want to see him sign as a wrestler. Bring him back in. He's still wrestling. He's still decent. Like James Storm was never an athlete. If James Storm stretched well enough, he could do all the things he needed to do still. Plus, if you're thinking about like who would you pair up with Elijah? Why not James Storm? You know, like there's potential in James Storm being a part of this still. And I think if you do that, like if you really put in the effort to bring him in, I think he's a name that elevates the floor a little bit. I don't think you're not bringing in James Storm to take the belt off Nick Nemeth at Bound for Glory. Maybe 10 years ago, sure, but not anymore. But James Storm as a tag team wrestler, James Storm as a character, hell yeah, there's a lot of potential there. But I think if you were into one fell swoop, bring in Monty Brown, James Storm, and then I don't know, Angelina Love, just for a knockout, right? If you bring in three names from TNA's past, along with Gabby Forza, Avery Styles, Joe Alonzo, we kind of glossed over this. Josh Bishop and J Rod, Jessica Rodan, were at lockdown. So they might be coming in as well. If you were able to bring in those six names, those three, four, six, those six names, plus a couple of other talents. Um, if you bring in those names plus a couple other like veterans like Monty, James Storm, and it'd be Angelina Love, maybe you bring back Roxy Laveau, who knows? Um, I think you could, in fact, have a real strong second half of the year. Maybe you even bring back EC3 as well. Give him another run, see what he's got left in his legs. That would be a great way to cap off the year, and I think it would be enough potential to get fans back on the hype train heading into 2027.
yeah. This is me fantasy booking. I know we like this caveat that we can tape it off into. I would love because as we said, it got potential some releases coming maybe from both companies, but I would imagine from WWE because they're just pricks like that anyway. I would love to see new tag team champions crowned on a big event show, and then after that you hear some music drop, and it's private party.
I would really like to see Carmelo Hayes in TNA. Honestly, I know Ilya Dragunov is probably going to go to AEW, which disappoints the fuck out of me because, like, God, Ilya Dragunov in TNA would be it would be. I'm Hawkeye from Avengers. Don't give me hope. But I think Carmelo, I think the Creed brothers, Dragunov, and also when you look at AEW, there's apparently a few names over there that aren't going to be brought back. Report came out last week, I think, that AEW is going to let some contracts expire and let them go their separate ways, which is what they should be doing. Like I love that Tony Khan doesn't want to fire people. I love that Tony Khan wants to be able to pay these wrestlers what he thinks they deserve. I think Tony Khan is a genuinely good person, at least from what I've seen in the wrestling world. He's also making sure that these guys are losing, not intentionally, but they're losing name value. They're losing the reputation. And if you are a good enough worker with a good enough personality and a good enough work ethic, you can make money on the indies. Not seven figures, but you can make money. So like you see guys like what was that, Marcus?
Is TNA still doing that thing where they're withholding them from events, or was that just with an AEW twist?
That's just with, from what I understand, any event that AEW is co-signing.
Gotcha.
Um, Now, you think about guys like Wardlow. He's old. Like Wardlow's almost 40, so I don't think WWE is going to sign him. TNA might. You bring in Wardlow for a few years, he might be a world champion in TNA, and he might get over. Like he might do the Mike Santana of it all. There's a lot of guys in WWE and TNA that I think, or in AEW and WWE, that could do very well in TNA, and I'm hoping we see it. Now, that doesn't even bring in the idea of possibly guys like Killer Cross showing up. And I know a lot of people kind of fell off the Killer Cross bandwagon during his run on Raw,
No,
but
he's the king of MLW right now.
yes, he is. He's the head guy in MLW. You could bring him in. He could be a real big asset for you. Donovan Dijakovic, I think, is wrapping up with MLW. I think at the moment maybe he'll stick around, but like he's already lost Bishop Dyer, Baron Corbin, and now Bishop is either going to be going to TNA or WWE, so he's not sticking around MLW. So like, who knows what Dijak's doing? There's a lot of talent
Yeah,
out there that if TNA focused on, they could bring in and really reinvent their roster.
yeah, and we talk about it all the time. Everybody can and should not go to AEW. I know
Mm-hmm.
why it would be attractive for Ilya to go to AEW because he could have them near death matches uh, with people like the Death Riders and Osprey and anybody from Don Callis family, particularly somebody like Carl Fletcher. Um, but I just think it'll happen like everybody else. He'll get a little bit of momentum, and then he'll either get lost in the shuffle off TV or they'll stuff him in a faction. Like Ace Austin is a hell of a get, but where is he?
Yeah.
He so everybody should and couldn't. I would like to see them get a final run. But I don't think Tony Khan will give them up, and I don't know if they want to leave. On top of the fact, I don't know if they could afford them. I'd like to see um, MVP Benjamin and Lashley have a run in TNA.
For some reason, people are super high on the idea of Bobby Lashley being let go from AEW, and I think that is hilarious because like someone put out like he put out like a list of like AEW stars he wants to see go, and it was like MVP and Bobby Lashley, but not Shelton, and I'm like,
That's
we
ridiculous.
because I love Shelton. Who doesn't love Shelton?
Yeah, same. I know exactly where you're going. Yes.
But Shelton's not a draw. Never has been. I don't know if he ever could have been. He wasn't a draw in Ring of Honor, wasn't a draw in WWE, wasn't a draw in New Japan. Eventually, Triple H buried him argument or Vince didn't like him argument just doesn't hold water. If you can't be the head guy in four different promotions, then I think it's you.
Yeah,
Bobby Lashley's a fucking Hall of Famer. Like Shelton's a Hall of Famer in the same way that like the best utility infielder who can play every position is a Hall of Famer, right? Like he's a Gold Glover at six different positions. Oh, okay, that's cool. Bobby Lashley's a Hall of Famer because he's fucking Ken Griffey Jr. He's a fucking LeBron James. Maybe not LeBron, but like he's like Scottie Pippen. Like Bobby Lashley's a genuine beast of a man, and he still moves pretty well despite the fact he's pushing 50.
yeah.
So like if
I,
if
I, wonder,
if
I wonder if
if AEW releases him, TNA needs to sign him. I don't give a shit if Bobby's 50.
yeah, yeah. I wonder if a sticking point for people want Lashley to leave is because he's the most world heavyweight champion guy on the roster who's nowhere near the picture of it.
I think that's fair. Honestly, I think that's fair.
Because it's two completely different beasts if you put Lashley next to Cage. Like it's not just because they swole that they in two different categories, right? Like they had Cage out there with I think Hitchesero, and I don't know if that was the best matchup, but there was no negative in my head that I felt like he was gonna win that match, and he didn't. But it's like those guys look like world heavyweight champions, but there's only one you have an expectation for actually being in the title picture of. And the fact that it feels like that Cage may be closer to it than Lashley, and we know how they treat Cage, there's a lot about what's going on over there.
Yeah, they're a bloated roster. You know, they're honestly a bloated roster, and having guys depart isn't the worst thing in the world.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any final thoughts on Lockdown? What would you give it for a grade, real quick?
I would give Lockdown, um, I'll give it a C plus. What you
I
think?
think that's fair. I would give it a C plus as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that'll do it. Let's go to the outro, realnerdcorp.com, REALNERDCORP.com. We are on Twitter at NERDCORP. That's Nerdcorp on Twitter. Marcus, you can be found on Twitter at ParadoxKid, PARADOXKID.
That's me.
You can also find him on his other podcast, The True Penny Show, TruePennyShow, over on Twitter as well. Marcus, what are you guys talking about on The True Penny Show this week?
Yes, we just did the second part of talking about the legendary Dover Punk Jr. It's gonna be a three-parter, but yeah, we just did our second part, so be on the lookout for that. Also, some stuff coming up. Death Before Dishonor took place. Ring One always deliver solid shows, so be on the lookout for that. And just some upcoming stuff from some stuff getting back on Glee for a minute if we catch one of those shows as well. So just be on the lookout for that stuff. And I always appreciate the listen.
Be sure to check them out there. You can find me on Twitter at Chad Nerdcorp, CHADNERDC. What the fuck? CHADNERDCORP. There we go. As well as on Instagram at Chad's Photo at CHADSPHOTOHUT. Websites realnerdcorp.com, Twitch and YouTube.com. You can find us at Real Nerdcorp. Nope. You can find us at Wrestling Underground. There you go. On both of those. That'll do us for this week. Next week, I think a two-parters in store. We're gonna recap the live edition of Impact because this feels like the start of the build up to Bound for Glory. So I feel like we're gonna want to focus on what happened this week as well. And depending on how much time we have, if we fly through the live show pretty quick, I do want to have a discussion on Ring of Honor because I feel like Ring of Honor does not have its own identity anymore, and I would like to talk about why that is because apparently they did someone did an article where views and searches for Ring of Honor is at an all time low. I don't know if that's true. We're going to double check that, but I do think it at least brings up the conversation of what is Ring of Honor and what Ring of Honor should be going forward. That'll only be on next week's show if the discussion on the live edition of Impact does not go as long as we think it will. So, like, if it goes 20 minutes, we got
Yeah.
something in our back pocket. If it goes an hour, we'll do it another day.
Yeah, yeah. Make no mistake about it. That Jay Lethal quote, as always, will be accompanied by the Ring of Honor discussion.
That belt made you. I made that belt. God, what
Oh
happened to
man,
Jay Lethal? All right. For Marcus, I'm Chad. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for checking us out. Thanks for giving us a chance. Remember, as always, to watch more wrestling. And as always, Marcus, take us home.
good night.